Deion Sanders and Bill Belichick are two of the most polarizing head coaches in the land. And are they going to keep their jobs? Let's find out.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into this Locked On College Crossover with Locked On Buffs and Locked On Tar Heels. Why are you guys talking together? Your teams don't play. Yeah, but we got two wild and crazy coaches, and Kevin Borba and Isaac Shade, the hosts of Locked On Buffs and Locked On Tar Heels, are here to talk about it. We want to welcome all of you in here with us. Yes, we're talking coaches today. What we're going to look at later in the show is kind of some parallel expectations for the Buffs and the Heels. Both teams have a win total of 4.5 this season. Yikes, Borba. Before we get there, we want to look at what each coach kind of needs to do to move off the hot seat, maybe cool that thing off a little bit. But first, Kevin Borba, we dive in by talking about Deion Sanders, Bill Belichick. Which of these two is more likely to be fired in this year? Obviously, Carolina fans will know that this is just year 2 for Bill Belichick. Borba, where do things sit right now with Deion? Is he on a hot seat? What is the temperature? Where are we at in Boulder?
Yeah, I think the national media, which I mean, you know how they love to project and stuff. I see Deion Sanders on a lot of hot seats from the national media, but in Boulder, I think there's still too much good faith in Deion Sanders, right? That 9-win season did a lot of heavy lifting for him. I mean, it was their first bowl appearance since the COVID year, their first 9+ win season since 2016. Because people forget before he got there, they were 1-11 and they were in the dumps. They were on my former employer, the Pac-12 Network's RIP station every week. And that's not a good thing, right? That means no national network wanted to pick you up. And so Colorado has been nationally televised every week. They've made hundreds of millions of dollars because of Deion Sanders and all of the energy and attention he brought to the table. I just think that he had to be willing to come to grasp that he had to make some changes, right? I think the one thing that was sort of plaguing him was he wanted to come into college football and do things his way. And it worked at Jackson State. He was able to just out-talent everybody, but he didn't have the right coaches around him. And it was more so valuing friendships over people who will elevate his game. And so when you have Warren Sapp at like a Vietnamese pageant, when the entire Colorado defensive line is in the portal, like that's not ideal, right? And when you have coaches, I think it was 5 or 6 coaches who had never coached college football outside of being on his staff, like it was just not conducive to success. But I think Deion Sanders earned himself some good faith. I think he is less problematic, and this may shock some people, than Bill, which is where I lean to you and go, why is Bill possibly on the hot seat?
Yeah, and like with Deion, another factor in it for me, like from the outside looking in, and then I'll go to Bill, was that to start the whole thing. It's funny, both of these coaches' tenures started by playing TCU. I vividly remember that Colorado at TCU game, and there was that upset in the 3-0 start for Colorado. I was like, wow, Deion quickly is changing this thing around. And then what, 1 win the rest of the way that season? Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct.
In the book, the season's bookending that 9-win season, I think it's a combined 7 wins. And so it's just like, it's just tough to reconcile that. But I think you're right. You're right on that 9-win season. For Bill, I think he's not riding on any college success because this is year 2. They won 4 games last year and didn't look great doing so. Part of it could have been salvaged, and the conversation might even be different right now, Borba, because there were 2 games that they had, and it was just like a fumble out of the end zone that went for a touchback. One of the craziest rules in all of football, by the way. But Carolina was literally plays away from being bowl eligible. And obviously 6-6 isn't anything to brag about, but I feel like you feel wildly different with 6-6 than you do at 4-8, which is what Carolina was last year. Consequently, Carolina now comes into this season with a much more difficult schedule than last year. I think they're going to be a better team, but there's just the Bill Belichick of it all that we know famously from his time with the Patriots, where, boy, they were clocking everybody, but it's just Bill. and I'm not going to tell you much, and I'm grumpy, and I'm only going to tell you what I have to. And I think now that's what's funny is I feel like he is less grumpy. I feel like he's a little bit more approachable at Carolina than he was in New England. But there's all this extra stuff around it. There's the Jordan Hudson of it all. There's the Michael Lombardi of it all, his longtime GM, who's currently on administrative leave, that's always had a bad. And so I think the combination of all of those things is just like, it's a circus, dude. And it's weird that it's a circus because you got this 70-year-old dude leading your program. And it's like to the point now where a lot of people are like, could we just have Mac Brown back? At least we didn't have to wake up every day and wonder what the headline was going to be, right? Like I've compared it before to like, I don't want to bring politics into it. And so like President Trump or not, a lot of days you wake up and say, holy cow, what's the president going to do today? And with some other presidents, they just kind of go about your business and you have no idea. I think that's kind of the difference to help put it in a national spotlight.
Yeah, I think that's a great sort of like encapsulation of like their problem at North Carolina, because I follow it closely because me and you, when Bill Belichick first got hired, you reached out to me. You were like, you're like the only guy with a coach like this as well. Like, whereas like that level of fame. And it's to this day, I think we're still in like this own little weird boat somewhere off in the ocean, just like, hey, it's just us trying to figure this out. And I think the one thing that's working for Deion Sanders, which I don't think a lot of people would really see this if they're not like following Colorado daily, is like, he is beloved by the local community. The administration loves him. Like they are ride or die for him. I was wondering if North Carolina, do they feel that same attachment for Bill Belichick? Because like, obviously Jordan is, I mean, she's Jordan. We may get a cease and desist after this. Who knows? Right. That's just sort of her thing. Lombardi is like, I mean, his firing was very unceremonious, or his firing.
He hasn't been fired
his
yet.
Administrative leave. Apologies. Yeah. Administrative leave. It was just very like, I don't know. It just seems like he's causing a lot more distractions, which was like the antithesis of everything he stood for as the Patriots head coach.
And I think you're spot on with it. No, he is not as beloved as Deion is. I think some of that is the personality difference that we talked about. Because Deion, man, you can't help but not like Deion. The bravado, the placing a do-rag on his bust at the Hall of Fame, like all of that stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing is the way in which Coach Belichick's hiring went, right? Like there was, for those in the Colorado fan base might not be aware of it, but basically the board of trustees, a couple of them kind of went rogue around the AD Bubba Cunningham and kind of pushed through the Belichick of it all. Had they left well enough alone and allowed the AD to do what he was trying to do, I don't think Bill Belichick is the host. Look at me talking about our jobs. I don't think Bill Belichick is the coach of the Tar Heels today. I think it's somebody like John Summerall or Matt Campbell. That's who kind of the names he was going after. And so I think even the climate in which Bill Belichick was hired hurt his reputation around town, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, and like I think going back to how Deion Sanders was hired, Colorado was like, we just want you, and we'll figure out the money stuff later. And so, yeah, I think with these two coaches, so let's just put a bow on this. If we had to pick one, who do you think is fired by the end of the year?
I think it's got to be for me. I think between the two, Belichick is highly the more likely to be fired of the two, and I think that's based on both results and that likability index you just talked about. Borba, you agree or disagree?
I agree, because I think the one thing I've observed about Deion Sanders is he'll never admit he's wrong, but out loud, but he will make changes. And he completely revamped his coaching staff. He moved on from a lot of his friends, demoted a couple of them and moved on from others. He changed the guys that he was chasing after in the portal, right? I think Colorado was like enamored with getting the former 5-star Alabama guy, the former 5-star LSU guy. And it's like, you know what, if they didn't work out there or at their previous stops, why would it happen here? And I think I always tell my Colorado listeners, and this is advice to North Carolina fans when it comes to the portal, don't get excited about the helmet sticker of where they come from, because if that school wanted to keep them, they would have, right? For the most part. And so that he went after guys who were FCS, G5, like all conference guys, leaders, and he's recruiting more. And so he is making changes and trying to adapt. I don't know if Bill's doing the same. And I just feel like there's so much baggage with Bill where we may get to a point in the middle of the season where Bubba Cunningham's like, honestly, like it'd just be better if we could just go our separate ways and we could get that coaching search started, because there was a slew of candidates. Like you named John Summerall and Matt Campbell. Like, I don't know if there's going to be a hot list of candidates this year. And so being that first team to sort of pull the trigger may be the best option.
Well, and here's another wrinkle. You just said Bubba Cunningham. There's a brand new AD this year, Steve Newmark. And so that I think that's part of it too, is so he comes from sports, from NASCAR.
Okay.
But he was part of the group that kind of vetted some of the Belichick hiring. But when you come in as a new guy, he was part of the new basketball hiring because Hubert Davis got let go as well. It's like, maybe part of the way to make your mark is to make this change right out of the gate. So I think that is an interesting wrinkle in all of this as well with Belichick. So then, Borba, the question becomes, what do these guys got to do to keep their job? I think we need to have that conversation. How do we move from a hot seat to at least moderately warm? We'll talk about that coming up in just a second. Right after we tell you about our friends at the game. Borba, since 1986, when I was all of 2 years old, I think you were negative age at that point, yeah?
Not even a thought. Not even a thought.
Since then, that's how far back the game goes. They've been creating classic college hats that fans are proud to wear, whether you're an alumnus, current student, season ticket holder, or simply someone who just never misses a game. A great college hat is more than apparel. It's a way to represent your school wherever you go, whether that's around Boulder or Chapel Hill or anywhere else. And this year, the game is celebrating its 40th anniversary by giving fans a chance to save on some of their most iconic college hats. So if you've been thinking about replacing an old favorite or adding a new one to your collection, right now is the perfect time. I'm wearing a Locked On hat right now, but man, I got some great ones from the game right here for Carolina. These classic horizontal bars. I remember these when I was growing up. And this one, Borba, that I'm just not even cool enough to wear with the circle. Maybe if I go sideways.
There you go. That's a look right there.
I know I look even more idiotic with my green shirt. But look, these hats from the game, I love how timeless they are. It's incredible. You can wear them year round, whether it's to a game or just around town. Hundreds of officially licensed college hats to choose from. With that, you'll find the perfect fit, not only for game day, but for every day. Don't miss this chance to celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off your entire order. Visit thegamecaps.com and use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. Again, that's gamecaps.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Celebrate 40 years of the game with 40% off, but don't wait, because this anniversary offer won't last forever. All right, Borba, we've got our head coaches who are at some level of hot seatedness. It sounds like nationally, people are putting both of them on the hot seat. I think internally, Boulder, it sounds like Deion's on less of a hot seat than Bill is, Coach Belichick is in Chapel Hill. In your mind, what does Deion need to do to turn down that national temperature?
Yeah, I think a bowl game, 6-6, would be like a really nice, just sort of like calm the storm, just sort of get everybody off his back. I think the hard part is we talk about that 9-win season, and like every Colorado fan right now is like, that 9-win season, everyone's tired of hearing about it, but it really does sort of like hold some weight. And so I think the dramatic part was he quadrupled the win total in year one. They went from 1-11 to 4-8, which, I mean, you said earlier they lost 7 of their last few games, and they did, but they still were better than what they were before. And then they jumped up to 9 wins, and then they plummeted to 3. And so it was like, okay, we need to see some form of like, we need to steady the ship. And obviously more than 6 wins would be lovely, but I think 6 wins sort of gets everybody like, okay, he made the changes, he made the fixes, like Deion Sanders is fine. Because I think the problem with the national media talking about like coaches on the hot seat is like, they pick and prod, and like they look for any and every reason to be like, okay, well, Bill Belichick's girlfriend did a weird interview, like let's get her fired, or like, oh, Deion Sanders, like he doesn't want to recruit, let's get him fired. But like there's so much more that goes into it, and I think just 6 wins and like improvement would be nice. I think that would calm a lot of tensions, at least in the national media. I think in Boulder, which you mentioned, North Carolina has a new AD, Colorado also has a new AD. And so I think showing him a little something, because the thing about new ADs is like, yours is a little different because he was a part of the process, but they're not attached to this guy. Like Rick George is who hired Deion Sanders, not Fernando Lovo. And so Fernando Lovo is like evaluating him. And I do think that sort of, it's like, okay, let's see something. And so yeah, I just feel like a bowl game silences a lot of people, silences a lot of doubters, because it's like, hey, we competed, we won some games. Colorado, I don't know if their schedule's as tough as North Carolina, but it's pretty tough to start the year. They got at Georgia Tech, they play at Northwestern, they play Texas Tech early. They play a lot of the good teams in the Big 12. So I do think that there's going to be some hard weeks in there. Isaac, is there any saving for Bill Belichick? Is it like, what if he goes on a run, or what if he only keeps it to one crazy interview a year?
And I think that's the thing. I don't think it's an inevitability that he's going to get canned. But I think there does have to be success. I think very similar to what you said, I think merely making a bowl game would do it, particularly against Carolina's difficult schedule. We'll talk more about the schedule itself in the third segment as we look at these kind of parallel expectations for these teams.
Yeah.
But if you could go bowling against a much more difficult schedule than you had last year, then I think that would be enough. And frankly, because of the difficulty of the schedule, what I'm really curious to see, and I'd love to hear from some Tar Heel fans, or maybe even Buffaloes fans in the chat, or whatever, like, how many games do you think is necessary for Coach Belichick to get to year 3? And again, last year, Carolina got 4 wins. And because of the further difficulty of this schedule, I wonder if 4 wins is enough to get you a year 3, depending on A, who those wins are against, and B, how you look in other games. Part of what lost Mac Brown his job was his last season in 2024. Carolina got blitzed at home by James Madison in game 4 of the season. 70-50 was the score of that game. They could not stop anything.
Was that Kurt Sig? Was that an early Signetti sighting that we didn't know about?
Man, was it?
That might have been.
I feel like it. Yeah, I think that was his last year, right?
Wow, I think so, because he was at Indiana in 25.
And 25 was the first year there. And
little did we know.
Little did we know. But at the time, Sig isn't Sig, and it's like, James Madison, what are you doing, Mac? And so I think that's part of it. So as you watch the games, is there a fall apart game? Carolina goes up to UConn toward the end of the season. Do they get embarrassed by the Huskies, who beat them in a bowl game a couple years ago, right? So I think some of it is not just wins and losses, but how you look in those wins and losses, right? This is a team that brings in a lot of new faces again, and how quickly are you able to assimilate those? Particularly, man, there's a lot of freshmen they brought in with this idea of developing them. And so I think that might be part of the equation as well, is even if the wins and losses don't even out toward the win side a little bit more, can the administration see development of the freshmen toward like, oh man, next year there's something coming? So I think there are truly a lot of factors beyond just, can you get to 6-6 for Carolina?
Yeah, and that's the hard part, because it's like 6-6 just feels like the baseline for success in college football, because like you either make a bowl game or you don't. But like there's so much more that goes into it, and like you sort of hit it on the head, is like, can they show improvement? Can they show like semblance of like, hey, we're going in a direction? And I think for Colorado, and I will say this is probably the one advantage Bill has over Prime, is like, for Bill, it's like, okay, it's year 2, we paid him all this money, like let's not get hasty just because it's been a little chaotic. Prime is heading to year 4. He is one of the highest paid coaches in the country because of that 9-win season. I mean, deservedly so. I was banging on the table to make him one of the highest paid coaches in the Big 12, if not the highest, because I was like, you don't want to lose this spark. And I thought that spark would continue. And I think for Colorado, just being like, if they stumble again, like say they go 3-9, 4-8, I feel like that is like unsafe job territory. Like the way to save your job is to be better. Like that is, for Colorado, I don't think there's that like grace period. Like I do feel like the heat could ramp up. Whereas Bill, it's like, hey, we won 4 games, but like we have a young quarterback who was looking good at the end of the year. We found a young tight end or whatever it may be. Like I feel like that could be working in your guys' favor, because Colorado is recruiting for next year. So like this year's roster is very much transfer heavy again. Like they're going to have at most 2 returning starters. Like that's just sort of the bed they built, or the whatever the phrase is, but you know what I mean. But like, yeah,
bed, just got to lie in it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, yeah, that's the hard part. The saving a job isn't easy because we also don't know what's running through the minds of the AD. Like if you were the AD, Isaac, let's put on your AD hat. You had like 17 hats to choose from. The game, I'm sure, has an AD edition over there. Like, what would you like? Would you hold Bill to like a very high standard just because you want to see results? Or would you just be like, okay, I'm like, is there a different standard that they're operating under? I guess is my question.
I think that's part of the thing for both our schools with new ADs coming in is certainly they've sat down and had those conversations, right? And where Newmark for Carolina comes in, sits Coach Belichick down and they have a conversation about season expectations and where things are at, like a State of the Union address, basically. And so I would imagine that Coach Belichick knows the deal. And look, he's a pragmatist for all of his grumpiness. He knows the deal. If I'm not winning, I'm out. And glad we tried this. See you later. Right.
Okay. Does he get fired though? Or do they allow him to do the, you know what? I just don't think this is working out for me. I'm going to step down. Has he earned that?
I don't see a world where he steps down. That's going to be on Cold Takes Exposed later. And I just think where it's like, you got to fire me. Right. Or because I don't see a world right now, especially with how last year went, where an NFL team is like beating down the door. Bill, we got to have you. Come on, man, fill our role. Right. That doesn't seem to be in the cards right now. And so I think it would have to be a firing rather than a resigning.
Interesting. Yeah. I think Colorado would give Prime the respect, not the respect, but if it came to that point, I think he would probably step down before he is fired. I don't think it'll go to that point though. And that's sort of what we'll talk about in this next segment with these parallel expectations. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. If you guys didn't know, FanDuel has all the action for just about everything, but right now it's baseball season. And so, Isaac, I don't know about you. I like to look at ballparks. I've been to quite a few. I've been to Atlanta, I've been to San Francisco, and they always play a huge role in how I play daily dingers because it's all about matchups, right? Yes. If there's a lefty hitter at Yankee Stadium, I'm like, he's probably going to go yard. If they're at Oracle Park in San Francisco, I'm like, probably not going to happen, right? You're not hitting a splash hit there. So daily dingers is a fun way to stay engaged with everyday's games, whether you're following your favorite team or keeping an eye on matchups across the league. Every game has someone capable of going deep. Now you get the chance to make your prediction before first pitch. I mean, I like to look at, like I said, ballparks, pitching matchups. Sometimes there's guys out there just throwing some BP and the hitters are hot. So there's also some guys are cold. Heliot Ramos on the Yankees. Over his last 23, I'd stay away from him if I were you, if I was a gambling man, which I'm not, of course. So are you ready to play your game today? Join all the action at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com to play daily dingers and make your free pick on who's hitting a homer, play ball, and swing for the fences on FanDuel, an official partner of the MLB. Isaac, I mean, parallel expectations. It feels deep. It feels philosophical. What are the expectations? Because I feel like if you saw this episode as a random college football fan, you'd be like, why in the hell are Colorado and North Carolina doing a crossover? And it's like, we asked ourselves that question too. But because of the level of fame, because of the stature they each bring, it's obviously different. Belichick is probably the best coach of all time at the NFL level. Deion Sanders is probably the best corner of all time, one of the best athletes of all time as well. They bring a level of fame that no one matches, right? I used to say this, and I would get murdered for it on my show, that the only person comparable, because at the time Bill Belichick wasn't here, was Nick Saban in terms of fame level, because no one can match that level of fame. And that automatically got clipped into me saying that Deion Sanders was Nick Saban, of course, which,
now they're on Catholic commercials together. It's crazy.
It's basically the same, right? Basically the same. But I just want to know, like, why do you think they have these expectations? Because they're famous. Like, why do you think their fame level ramps up the expectations? So what are your expectations for Bill?
Yeah. By the way, I was thinking about it while you're doing that FanDuel read. Curt Cignetti, that year that Carolina got blitzed by JMU, that was his first year at Indiana in 24. Because 24, 25, and this is year 3, 26.
Oh, no.
So the years were all messed up in my head.
Even worse.
I know, honestly. Yeah, at least you could say it was Curt Cignetti. He cooked us. Yeah, there's not that anymore. Anyway, what's funny is with both these coaches, I think the thing is their personality, but it's funny because of the differing personalities, right? With Belichick, famously grumpy, but the success as a head coach is the thing that pairs with that personality. And so you have been this like enigma, this, you know what I'm saying? Like a tortured genius kind of idea. And I think there's the mystery of it, like a train wreck where you can't look away because it's like, you've been so insanely successful, but who are you? Why don't you share stuff with us? And there's all of that. But one of the things I've come to really learn to love about Coach Belichick is his passion and love for the game of football, the history of it. Like, it is insane. And his depth of knowledge, Borba, blows me away. Like, can connect anyone. Like, oh yeah, he was there and did that thing. And his dad was the coach at this place and they won these guys. Like, it is encyclopedic. Mm-hmm. And so there's these things you'll learn to really appreciate about him. But I think there's all the infamous stuff in New England that plays into it with Deflategate, and could Bill have done it on his own, or was it the perfect pairing of he and Tom, right? Like, and so there's just all these mysteries and questions. And so I think what brings people to Belichick is, yes, the success, yes, the personality, but just what are you? You know, that people want to know.
Yeah, no, I feel like that's the best way I've ever heard Bill Belichick explained, honestly, because he is an enigma, and so is Deion Sanders, just in a different way. But
yes,
to talk from the outsider's perspective about Bill Belichick, it's like, I think we just expect him to like somehow flip a switch, right? Like your guys' first drive against TCU, I remember Twitter. It was electric. Twitter was like classic Bill, like diced him up, sliced him up. It was just like classic Bill. And then it was like, would you lose by like 40, right? Was it? What's the final score? It was bad, right? And so I just feel like
48-14.
Yeah, I was gonna say you constantly expect Bill to figure it out, and he's bringing lacrosse players in, he's bringing baseball players in, and he's doing his thing, and it's like, when does the thing work? And that's where I like, from the outside perspective, it's like, I think I give Bill Belichick the benefit of the doubt, maybe more than others, because of his NFL success. And I know it's a different sport, but I just feel like it's got to be in there somehow. And so that's where like I am. And it's like, my expectations are that he's going to figure it out because he's the best coach ever at the NFL level. But at the same time, I look at Deion Sanders and I'm like, the expectations for him, I think, come because you compared they're both of them to the president earlier. I think Deion Sanders is probably a little bit more polarizing than Bill. And I compare him a lot. The president is a comparison that I brought up too, because I don't care where you are politically, but you either love the president, you either hate him. I feel like that's sort of been the Deion Sanders experience, where it's like you have people hate watching Colorado games. Like when they were winning, it was electric, but there was so many people that were like, when they lost that first game in 24, which I think it was to Oregon, and they got absolutely blasted. It was like embarrassing. There was a lot of talking before the game, which made it worse. And like, yeah, Dan Lanning had they're going for the clips, we're going for the wins kind of vibe. And like, people love that. Like that was like, people still talk about that to this day. Like where I feel like the expectations come because he's so famous and confident. And I think the thing with Bill is like, he reminds me of that grumpy cat meme where he's just like, he looks angry all the time, but it's like almost adorable in a way where he's like, it's just grandpa. Like that's just how grandpa is. But with Deion, it's like, he's just such a personality where it's like, this guy's electric. Like he talks that talk, he walks that walk. And I don't know, I feel like the expectations come from him being talkative. Deion Sanders challenged the norms of college football immediately. And I just think you can really, I put a bow on this, is like, what are the expectations from the fan perspective, and why are fans so like enamored with these two? Because I think the fans also guide expectations as well, just as much as the media.
Dude, absolutely. Because it's like, regardless of what an AD or a board or a president plans to do, like if there becomes this groundswell that's untenable, like good luck. Like public discourse matters. I don't care what the dollars say or anything else. If public sentiment is gone, I don't see how you get it back. Again, similar to a politician, Borba. It's crazy.
Yeah. 4.5 wins though. That's our mark for both of us.
4.5 wins. So let's let this be the final word. Let's make the prediction for both schools. Over or under that 4.5 from our friends at FanDuel for Colorado. What you seeing, Borba?
I'm taking the over. I think the Big 12 is a toss-up league, and I think Colorado made enough changes on the coaching staff. I'm really high on Brendan Marion I think he'll be a head coach someday. I think he gets them over. I think they'll put up points. What about Billy B? I think you guys, I'd go under. I'm an outsider, though. Let me know what you think.
Yep, that's where I'm at as well. I think identical is what I have to last year. 4-8 for the Tar Heels is the mark I have. Literally on a show earlier this week, I went game by game, and I with the toughness of the schedule, yes, it's a better team. I just do not see it happening for bowl eligibility for Carolina. Under the 4 for me is where I'm at. Borba, it was a lot of fun, man. It's great to be together. Yeah, wild to have these two entities that are Deion, Prime Sanders, and Bill Belichick. I grew up in Atlanta, a Braves fan, so I got a huge spot in my heart for Deion my whole life. And man, I grew up in the 90s on him, so I'm here to see it. And hope that both these guys can have great years. We'll have to circle back around and figure it out.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you're not tuned in already to Locked On Buffs and Locked On Tar Heels, we'd love to have you circle in and check in on what these wild and crazy coaches are doing throughout the season. Who knows how bright the flame is going to burn this year? Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Go follow our shows on the audio platforms. Turn on automatic downloads. Let them rip. That truly helps us. We honestly believe that so much. Season is at, it's here. A week from now, Carolina's playing. 2 weeks short. Y'all play in week 1 or week 0? That Georgia
week
Tech
1. We're Thursday though. Thursday night football, baby.
Thursday. Oh, heck yeah. So buckle up for that. Set your DVR if you still do that kind of thing. It's going to be electric. Thanks for making it Locked On your first team every day for this college crossover. Locked On Buffs, Locked On Tar Heels. Until next time, peace.